Our speaker this evening, Don Tapscott, has been a world leader in exploring the societal impact of the digital revolution. In 2011, he was named one of the world's most influential management thinkers by Thinkers 50. He has authored or co-authored 14 widely read books, including his 1995 work, The Digital Economy, which sparked conversations worldwide about the transformational nature of the internet. I know that some of you this morning were able to attend the SSHRC-sponsored panel, Imagining Canada's Future, which Don participated in, which was a wonderful panel with three great thinkers looking forward to anticipate what the ongoing digital revolution will bring and has in store, not just for Canadian society, but globally. So we're thrilled that Don has joined us today to explore the important role that our disciplines, the social sciences, the humanities, and the arts, will play in this continuing process. Please welcome Don Tapscott.
Well, thank you very much. Comme j'ai dit ce matin, j'aimerais faire cette présentation en français, mais rapidement, les francophones ici me demanderaient de la donner en anglais. So I'll stick to English if you want, but if you want to ask a question in French, I can. Je que vous comprenez. Comprenne, sorry. Il faut pratiquer mon français. Let me begin. I know a number of you are tweeting. I'm on Twitter. I'm at @dtapscott, and there was a great tweet stream and discussion about the session this morning. Feel free to do that. I'd like to begin by saying that I'm a graduate of the social sciences, and I've studied taken lots of humanity courses. In fact, after my undergraduate year, I had a degree in sociology and psychology. I went to McGill and did a victory lap. A year where I just studied history and economics and some things I was interested in. I ended up doing a master's in education. And I have a great admiration and respect for what you do, and I don't think it's becoming less relevant. I think it's becoming more relevant. And 45 minutes from now, I hope I've convinced you of that idea. Now, this is a time of very profound change. And Wikinomics, a book I co-authored with Anthony Williams, was about the corporation. And the book argued that the internet is not about websites, eyeballs, stickiness, clicks, page views, .coms, or hooking up online. It's becoming a new global computational platform that radically drops transaction costs. And that, we argued, is leading to a profound change in the deep structure and architecture of the corporation. How we sort of orchestrate capability to innovate, to create goods and services, to engage with the rest of the world. And the book did great. It was actually the best-selling management book in the United States for the whole year. And then something happened. We saw the meltdown of the global financial services industry. And I remember the moment that I was really struck by this. I was speaking in Brussels, and it was to a group called SIBOS. This is the biggest meeting of bankers that happens every year. There were 7,000 bankers. It was in September of 2008, and I was giving the closing speech to their talk. And the day before, all Lehman, the big investment banks went under, a couple of insurance companies went under, and the sky fell. And I looked out at this vast sea of deer in the headlights. Only in Canada could you understand that analogy. And it occurred to me, Bob Dylan, there's something going on here and you don't know what it is. This is not just about the corporation. This is about civilization. That arguably, every institution in society is going to go through a very profound change. I mean, who would have imagined, including the financial services industry, who would have imagined 4 years ago that one of the big themes of business books would be how to save capitalism? Or is capitalism even savable? And these books are not being written by occupied people, they're being written by the capitalists. People like Matthew Bishops, the very thoughtful business editor of The Economist. So For some reason, I've ended up speaking at the same event as Paul Krugman a few times recently. You know, the New York Times columnist, controversial guy, Nobel Prize winner. And he argues to the audience that when you have the meltdown of a financial services industry, you get a prolonged period of slump. He says Japan had one in 1992. They're still in a slump. So get ready, he says, for a couple of decades of ugliness in the global economy. And that's the good news scenario, because some really bad things can happen, like a big default of a sovereign debt in Europe, and the euro crashes. Europe goes into a depression. The whole global economy goes into a depression. I get depressed just listening to him. But my view, and far be it from me to debate a Nobel Prize-winning economist, but my view is slightly different. I think the future is not something to be predicted. The future is something to be achieved. And we can achieve a very different future than the one that Paul outlines. But to do that, we need to know what the problem is. And the problem doesn't fall within the paradigm of traditional economists who worry about things like the business cycle and should we have more stimulation or fiscal, austerity or whatever. This is not a cyclical thing we're going through. This is not a business cycle. It's a secular change. It's a sea change. It's a punctuation point in human history. And basically, many of the institutions that have served us well for decades or even centuries have now come to the end of their life cycle. Arguably, the industrial age is finally coming to an end. And this is the theme of my new book. And the new version, paperback, came out today. And it's actually, my one commercial note, it's going to be on sale. You're the first people who can buy it at the back of the room. And as I said this morning, the best way to get this book is in massive volume. You look like people with friends. Christmas is coming soon. No, seriously. I'm very proud of this book. It's my 14th, but it's my life's work. And it's about this modest little question of what's wrong with civilization and how can we fix it. Look around, and we have 16, at least, there's a few that we didn't talk about in the book, institutions that are in various stages of being stalled or in atrophy or failing. And each of these is a whole sort of hour-long talk. So if you're good for the next 16 hours, I mean, I'm game, but I think I'm going to leave it to the question period and come back and we can talk about any one of these if you want. But just a quick survey across the top there, the Industrial Age Corporation, typified by General Motors, America's greatest company, it went bankrupt. Now, for each of these failing institutions, you have the contours of the sparkling new initiatives to transform this institution around a new set of principles and around the internet. So Jay Rogers, a Iraq vet, saw his friends killed in a Humvee next to him, decided that America's in the Mideast to defend our energy interests, and a lot of that energy goes into what he called a sclerotic automobile industry that's failed to produce safe, fuel-efficient cars. It's been externalizing its costs onto society. So he decides to build a new kind of car company that has integrity based into the model, but also where he has 5,000 designers, but they're not inside his boundaries. They're all on the internet. It's called Local Motors. And he doesn't have a 3 million square foot manufacturing facility. He has 30 local plants in 30 local geographies, hiring local people, building local cars for local markets. And could something like this, these cars are just coming out now, they're getting great reviews. Could something like this scale? Well, the bad news, and I guess the good news for Jay Rogers, is he's now got competition using the same model. I was in Korea last week talking to the Korean auto industry, which is, of course, kicking it in the world, and they're wondering what's the next model. The financial system, the core modus operandi of Wall Street, almost brought down global capitalism, and it hasn't changed. Could happen again. Easy. The newspapers are going away. 70 newspapers have gone bankrupt in the last decade in the United States. As one youngster said to us, if the news is important, it will find me. But there are all these new models that are becoming informed now. Twitter is my newspaper. You know, I've got my economics writers and my political writers, and my sports writers, and my Don Tapscott's innovators, the 100 most people who are the best innovators in my space, and I'm looking at the people talking about me and my personal friends and so on. Nation state and global problem solving. I mean, we could go on. The university and the school, each of these is an industrial age model. The nation state came out of the rise from agrarian society to industrial capitalism. Education, I mean, look at, here we are in a lecture theater. I mean, this model of learning is sort of the very best model that 17th century technology can provide. And, you know, and I mean, it's, all of these models are something in the center, in this case on the stage, pushes out standardized whatever to passive recipients. You know, a lecture, I'm a teacher, I have knowledge, you're a student, you don't, you're an empty vessel, get ready, here it comes. You know, and in the high schools or public schools, your goal is to take it into active working memory and through practice and repetition to build deeper cognitive structures so you can recall it to me when I test you. Drill and kill. You know, sage on the stage. Young people are not performing well, we'll test them more. That's what we need, a generation that can perform well on tests. Now, don't get me wrong, I have a graduate degree in psychological testing, and there's a role for testing, but is that what we need? You know, when I graduated as a kid, I was kind of set for life. You kept up in your chosen field. Today, young people graduate, they're not set for life. They're set for like 15 minutes. And if you took a technical course, half of what you learned in the first year is obsolete by the time you get to the fourth year. So it's not so much what you know that counts. It's your capacity to think, isn't it? And to solve problems, then to learn lifelong, to put things in context, to understand the history of things, to understand all of the, you know, extenuating circumstances, social factors, and others that affect the kind of things you learn in the liberal arts undergraduate education, actually. So, mass production, mass distribution, mass marketing, mass media, mass education, you name it, something in the center pushes out standard parts to passive recipients. The industrial age was an age of standardization, of scale, and of production. Now, if you want to understand what's happening today, again, with respect to Paul Krugman, I don't think you go back to 1991 or even 82 or even the Great Depression. You need to go back to a previous period in human history. So let me take you to 90,000 feet for a sec. A few hundred years ago, all around the world, we had agrarian societies. The means of production and political system was called feudalism. And knowledge was tightly concentrated in tiny oligopolies. People just didn't know about things. There was no concept of progress. You were born, you lived your life, and you died. But nothing ever went forward. And then along comes Johannes Gutenberg with his great invention, the printing press. And over time, people began to acquire knowledge. And when they did, the institutions of feudal agrarian society appeared to be stalled or frozen or in atrophy or failing. It didn't make sense for the church to be responsible for medicine when people had knowledge. It didn't make sense for a bunch of kings and nobles to be running things. Martin Luther called the printing press God's highest act of grace. We saw the rise of parliamentary democracy. All around the world there were revolutions that enabled this transition. The French Revolution, that's what the American Revolution was. In Canada, you know, we had these feudal powers, France and England, that kind of ran things over here, and it was a feudal society. We didn't have a revolution, typically Canadian way. We kind of got through it peacefully. But I was in, I'm actually off to Brazil next week, and last time I was there, I saw a statue of Bolivar. You have these, all the national democratic revolutions all across Latin America. And eventually we saw the rise of the nation state, of science, of the universities, the corporation, commercial relationships, industrial capitalism, and it was all good. It advanced our standard of living, social development, but it came with a cost. And today, once again, the economic and technological genie is out of the bottle. It's called the internet. Only this time it's very different. The printing press gave us access to the written word. The internet gives us access to the knowledge, but not just knowledge, to the intelligence contained in the crania of other people on a global basis. This is not an information age. It's an age of networked intelligence. It's an age of collaboration. It's an age of collective intelligence, and I'll come back to that. So this idea, this slide right here, is not new. I've been writing about this for over 30 years. Some of you may remember a book by Alvin Toffler called The Third Wave. That was close to 30 years ago, I think. You know, agrarian, industrial, I think he called it an information age, and we can cut him some slack for that. These ideas were ideas in waiting. Their time had not come. They were waiting for the maturation of some objective conditions. And that's what's happening right now, right here, today. 4 huge transformations. Now, the first is technology. And we can come back and talk about this if you want, but this is the so-called new web, and it ain't your daddy's internet. The internet of the dot-com period, you accessed it through a PC tethered to a desktop. The new web, we access through the thing. These are billions and trillions of commercial and smart communicating devices that have knowledge. And I'm typically covered with these things. I mean, I was actually first time in a hotel last night where the door was not a smart communicating device. It was an old school hotel here. But normally your door has knowledge. I had a camera stolen from a hotel room in Miami, and the door knew about me. It knew who'd been in and out of the room. We found unauthorized access. I have a friend in Toronto. Everything in his house that has electrical power has an IP address, which means all these things talk to each other. I have no idea what his refrigerator says to his toaster. But actually, he was bragging that his fence talks to his sprinkler system. And I said, well, Ken, why would you care? And he says, well, Don, if a burglar comes over the fence, the sprinkler is my first line of defense. So this is pervasive ambient computing. The physical world is becoming smart and interconnected. We have broadband mobility. Remember dial-up? Mobility is huge. Geospatiality. The old web, you surfed websites. The new web, you surf the physical world. You take your little iPhone or whatever, and you walk outside here, and you use Google goggles or Layer, and you look around, and it's a camera showing you what you're seeing, but things are annotated. Then you can ask for a different layer. Give me the academic layer, like what's going on in that building, or give me the commercial layer, like how can I use this as a conference facility, or tell me where the ATMs are, or is there a coffee shop somewhere around here? So this is the intersection of physical and digital. We have the rise of true multimedia. There's this thing called the Berlin Film Festival. Every year they have something called the Berlinale Keynote. And I did it a few years ago. I talked about this thing that I call the film 2.0. The narrative of what is a movie has remained unchanged for close to a century. It predates Battleship Potemkin, Sergei Eisenstein's great film. It has a beginning, an end, a plot, and characters. Well, now you get to be in the movie. Now, personally, I just like to veg and watch a movie, but my kids want to be in the movie. We've got the rise of web services. The internet is becoming a big computer. Every time you use it, you program it. So these are huge changes that are creating a global platform for collaboration that's rich media, that's ubiquitous, that's with us at all times, and that's a big change. Now, the second change is a demographic revolution. We have the first generation to grow up digital, and these kids are different. Does anybody here have kids under the age of 33? Hands? Okay. Who here is under the age of 33? Oh, awesome. Okay. Well, I can be brief on this, because you all know what I'm talking about. I started studying kids about 15 years ago when I noticed how my own children were effortlessly able to use all this sophisticated technology. And at first I thought my children are prodigies. And, but But then I noticed all their friends were like them, so that was a bad theory. So I started working with about 300 kids, and in 1997 I wrote a book, badly dated on this slide, called Growing Up Digital. And I argue that kids have no fear of technology because it's not there. It's like the air. Like I have no fear of a refrigerator because it's not technology to me. And flash forward to today, they're not just growing up digital, they've grown up. They're coming into the workforce, into the marketplace, into society, and there's no more powerful force to change every institution than the first generation of digital natives. I'm a digital immigrant. I had to learn the language. Now, this is a big generation. It's the baby boom echo, right? Born between 1978 and 1997 inclusive. That's a bunch of you in this room. But we don't get this yet. We call it this the boomlet. It's not a boomlet. The echo is louder than the original boom. You young people, there are 8 million of you in Canada. There's 7.8 million baby boomers. Based on your demographic muscle alone, you'll dominate the 21st century. Now, what's the defining characteristic of this generation? What do you want to call them? Well, some people call them Gen Y, but to name them a letter to follow on to the demographically puny Generation X, that doesn't seem right to me. Some people call them the millennials, but you know, the fact that the year 2000 came and went, that didn't really affect the experience of youth, did it? What did? What's the defining characteristic of this generation? Well, this is the first generation to grow up digital. Now, this cartoon here did not get a laugh. It's from my book, Growing Up Digital, from 15 years ago. And when I put this cartoon on the screen, people used to just slap their knees and roar about a baby using a computer. You're all looking at that like, what the heck is that big thing? Why isn't it an iPad or something? And you know something? Time online is not taken away from hanging out with your friends, talking to your parents, learning the piano, kicking a football, doing your homework. Time online for these kids, compared to their boomer parents when they were growing up, time online is taken away from guess? TV, correct. The baby boomers watched 24 hours a week of television per kid when they were growing up. These kids are in front of a screen about the same amount of time, even a little bit more, but they watch TV very differently. They come home and they turn on their computer, and they're in 3 windows, and they got 3 magazines open, and they're listening to MP3 files, and maybe talking on the phone, more likely texting on the phone. They got a video game. Oh yeah, and they're doing their homework, and the TV may be on, but it's in the background. It's like music, right? And when they're online, yeah, you guys, you know what I'm talking about. How many of you have cable TV? And when they're online, what are they doing? Well, rather than being the passive recipients of somebody else's video, they're reading and organizing and authenticating and researching and composing their thoughts and so-called multitasking and telling their stories and having to remember things. This is creating a generation that thinks differently, actually, that processes information differently. I'd love to talk to you about that if you want, because it's very controversial. But I've done the biggest research project ever on this generation. Actually, it's the biggest research project ever on any generation. It's a $4 million research project. We interviewed or surveyed 11,000 young people in 10 countries. And you know what? This is not bad for young people. Of course, kids need to have balance. But of course, we need to protect their safety. And you know, of course, kids will do dumb things like they don't understand at an early age that privacy is an important thing. But overall, this is not bad for kids. And slowly, the brain science is coming to tell us that. Now, by the way, this is the first time in human history when children are an authority about something really important. I was an authority on model trains when I was 11. Today, the 11-year-old at the breakfast table is an authority on this digital revolution that's changing business, commerce, government, learning, every institution in society. So in the 60s, we had, when I was in university, we had this generation gap, big differences between kids and parents. Kids and parents get along well today. Look at your iPod and your kid's iPod or your parents' iPod. There's overlap. My parents didn't even like the Beatles, you know, let alone the Doors. You know, what we have today is what I call a generation lap, where kids are lapping their parents on the info track. And if you've got a teenager in your house, you know what I'm talking about. Who does the systems administration in your home? So if you're designing a university, a government agency, a research program, a democracy, a corporation, a family, a school, a bank, a healthcare system, these are the 8 norms of the generation. And I don't want to dwell on this too much, but I'd be happy to come back and talk about it. These are the norms that differentiate them from their parents, and these norms are consistent across the 10 countries we studied. This is the first ever global generation, and we can be enormously hopeful about them. And it's a good thing, because my generation, you young people, we're leaving you with a broken world. Sorry about that. You got to fix it. So by all means, go out and be prosperous, but we need more than that from you. We can come back to that. Number 3, we have a social revolution. So it's not just that there are 1 billion people on Facebook, almost, although there are, and 200 million people on Twitter, but social networking is becoming social production. This is not about hooking up online. This is a new means of production that's in the making. So you can produce all kinds of things, like an encyclopedia that's 10 times bigger than Britannica, 20 times, some people say, that's in over 200 languages, and according to the big study that's been done, the quality is just as good, but nobody owns it. These are Wikipedia. This is a heat map for Wikipedia, where it's white and yellow. White means over 1,000 Wikipedia articles coming from that square mile radius. This is a heat map of Wikipedian Arabic, actually. So all around the world, there are people writing Arabic Wikipedia articles. So what's going on here? Well, something really big. And if you're in humanities and social sciences, you would know about this, and you should care about it a lot more now. It's called self-organization. Let me explain. It was, I don't know, 5 years ago, I gave my son Alex, who was 20 at the time, third year at university, I gave him an advanced copy of Wikinomics as a Christmas present. I gave him some other things for Christmas, too, okay? But he says, thanks, Dad. He goes off, starts reading the book, comes back a couple hours later, he says, hey, Dad, this is a good book. It's like he's surprised or something. So he said, I think I'll create a community on Facebook. Now, I was just coming on because the EDU thing, they were letting anyone come on. And I actually waited because I thought it was inappropriate for, you know, a parent to be on there when it was just all young people. But he says, I think I'll create a community. So I said, can I watch? And starts at it. 15 minutes later, he's created the Wikinomics community. Another 15 minutes later, he has 6 members. By the time we're eating turkey on Christmas night, he's got 130 members in 7 countries, 7 regional coordinators, a president himself, a secretary, and a chief information officer for the community. He's put out a PDF of the first 2 chapters of the book. Before I'm eating turkey, I got kids writing in saying, Mr. Tapscott, we found errors in your book. And the community is placing demands on me. One of the kids writes in and says, exactly how is Mr. Tapscott going to be contributing to our community? What is this? Well, 2 words, self-organization. French, auto-organisation. Now, self-organization has been around throughout human history. Language was a function of self-organization. There was no central committee of the English language that said this will be called a glass. It just kind of happened. I mean, science was a function of self-organization. The university. But what used to take place over millennium or centuries can now happen really fast. I mean, I never could have created a community of 130 people in 7 countries when I was 20, regardless of what I did. Alex did it on a single Christmas day. You understand this, it's a powerful force. Now, Barack Obama understood it, and he forever changed the way you get elected. Did he change the way you govern? Or do we still have the you vote, I rule, industrial age model of government, right? Somebody in the center pushes out stuff to passive recipients, pushes out services, pushes out laws, whatever. Again, a humbling story. This is, I don't know, probably 5 years ago now. Someone sent me an email saying, you know, this guy, senator in Illinois, Obama, he thinks your book, Wikonomics, is the key to winning the presidency, transforming America, and changing the world. Go to mybarackobama.com. So I went there. There's my book, right on the screen. We believe in the principles of transparency, inclusiveness, use of the internet in every way possible. We believe in the book Wikonomics by Don Tapscott and Anthony Williams. He's saying, I'm asking you to believe not just in my ability to bring about real change in Washington, I'm asking you to believe in yours. And I looked at this thing, and, well, my first reaction was, I am the man. But not so fast, because it turns out I'm not the man. There was a Wikonomics community. There was also a Young Firefighters for Obama community. And there was a Single Moms for Daycare for Obama community. He created a platform whereby 35,000 communities self-organized. And that's what brought him to power. Now, we use the word revolutionary a lot these days, but I use it advisedly. And in the sense that there's actually a revolution in revolutions that are underway. Now, you know this whole debate with Malcolm Gladwell. He wrote an article, the New Yorker said the revolution will not be tweeted. He said that, and you sociologists know all about this, that real change comes about through strong ties, not through weak ties. And the internet creates a bunch of weak ties. So, yeah, there may be 200 million people on Facebook causes, but just because you go like hardly means you change the world. He says, he called them, rather than activists, he called them slacktivists. So, people like me said, well, actually, all ties in society that are strong begin as weak ties, maybe with one exception, the relationship between a mother and her baby. That one's strong from the get-go. But even that one kind of incubates for a while. And if we can create a global collaborative platform whereby weak ties can be forged, surely they can become stronger, and this will be a powerful force for change. It was a good debate, and then reality intervened. Reality had a name, Tunisia. And the Tunisian revolution was not caused by social media, it was caused by injustice, or more precisely, a disparity between expectations and reality. It wasn't created by social media, it was created by a new generation of young people who didn't want to be treated as subjects. But the media was really important in all kinds of ways that people don't understand. You know, in the Tunisian revolution, snipers were killing unarmed people in the streets, kids, students. And so the students would take a camera, take a picture, triangulate the location of the sniper, send it to friendly military units who'd come in and take out the snipers. You think the internet's about hooking up online? In this case, it was a military tool to defend unarmed young people from murderers associated with a tyrannical regime. In Syria today, the same thing is happening. Up to 2 months ago, if you got injured in a demonstration in Syria, you went into the hospital with a broken leg, you came out with a bullet in your head. So these kids used Twitter to set up an alternative healthcare system so that when someone was injured, a car would come and pick them up, take them to a makeshift clinic where doctors would give medical help as opposed to killing the person. So the internet radically drops transaction and collaboration costs in business, but it's also dropping the cost of dissent, of rebellion, and even of insurrection. And this, of course, is extending out today. And we can talk about that. I mean, you can say what you like about the Occupy movement, but you know, yeah, it's a bunch of hippies and radicals and commie pinkos and anarchists and earth-shoe mama, you know, losers who are jealous and all the rest. Well, there were some of all of those involved. But fundamentally, I mean, this is the tip of the iceberg on a growing sense of that the society is unfair. It was a little over a month ago, I gave the opening talk to something called TEDx Wall Street, and it was at the New York Stock Exchange. It was a tough talk to give. I started out, Wall Street, we have a problem. You know, there's a growing sense that the world is broken, it's becoming more unfair, and you're at the heart of this mess. And we're going to have to change the modus operandi of Wall Street to be successful. So, and I lived. I'm here. I survived. Let's come back to this, social change. And the final driver is an economic revolution. And are there any economists here? Okay. You know what? I know you think I'm going to dump on you, but I'm not. I'm going to talk about a very famous economist. His name was Ronald Coase, and C-O-A-S-E. And about 80 years ago, he wrote a paper where he asked a deceptively simple question. He said, why does the firm exist? He said, if Adam Smith is right and the open market's the best mechanism for determining how goods and resources and information and money are allocated, why isn't everybody an independent contractor at every step along the way in production? Why do we work for companies? And he said the answer is, and he won a Nobel Prize actually for saying this, the answer is transaction costs. Now he defined that very broadly. He really was referring to the cost of collaboration. He said the cost of search, for example, this is 70 years ago, 80 years ago. The cost of search, of finding all the right information or the right people to do something in an open market would be totally prohibitive. So we bring that inside the boundaries of a corporation where we have things like filing cabinets to get information and org charts to find people. And the big industrialists understood this. Henry Ford had within the boundaries of the Ford Motor Company a power plant, steel mill, glass factory, a shipping company. Why? Because the costs of transactions in an open market were greater than the cost of doing things inside the boundaries of the Ford Motor Company. Along comes information technology. And, you know, fax and telephones and modern shipping and couriers and all this, transaction costs began to decline. Now, 20 years ago, in a book called Paradigm Shift, I described it, the enterprise is becoming an extended enterprise. Then, we saw the internet, and vertically integrated companies began to unbundle further into networks that focus on what they do best, but they partner to do the rest. This is a 15-year-old diagram of the Cisco business web. Cisco understood this. Their competitors got ahead. Unfortunately, companies like Nortel and others did not understand this, and they fell behind. A business model conferred competitive advantage. And now transaction costs are dropping so much that peers can come together and create value. Peers in the sense of peers within a company, peers in the sense of companies acting as peers rather than as superiors and subordinates in a supply chain. And the crazy one is peers outside the boundaries of traditional companies. So if you can create an encyclopedia like that, what else could you create? Could you create a computer operating system that nobody owns? Well, Linux is now the dominant operating system in the world. It dominates medium and large computers. It, as of a couple of months ago, dominates mobile technologies. Linux is owned by nobody. It's in the commons. Linux recently announced a big new user, a new customer. China. Imagine that you're the salesperson on the China account. Hey, boss, I got a big new customer today. China. Very big. A lot of users, a lot of users. It's going to be big. So could you create a physical good this way? Well, the Chinese motorcycle industry is dozens of little companies. They all cooperate together. They meet in tea houses and on the internet. There's no OEM. There's no Harley Davidson pulling all the strings. This is now 40% of global motorcycle production. And get ready for the $1,000 car from China using the same model. So I'll just end this with a story. This guy, his name is Rob McEwen. I'd like to say, I have a think tank that scours the world to find the most amazing case studies. The reason I know this story is because he's my neighbor. He moved across the street from me, and he held a cocktail party to meet the neighbors. And he He said, you're Don Tapscott. I've read some of your books. And I said, great. I said, what do you do? And he says, well, I used to be a banker, and now I'm a gold miner. He's a funny guy. He introduces his wife, Cheryl, to the group. He says, this is Cheryl. She's a gold digger. And thankfully, she's not. And she's an enormously competent person with a sense of humor. But he tells me this amazing story. He takes over this gold mining company, and his geologist can't tell him where the gold is. So he gives them some more money for geological data. They come back, they can't tell him where to go into production. This goes on and on. After a few years, he's ready to give up. But one day, he has an epiphany. He wonders, he says to me, if my geologists don't know where the gold is, maybe somebody else does. So he does a radical thing. He takes his geological data, biggest secret in the mining industry. It's kept in safes and high-security computer systems. He publishes this data, and he holds a contest on the internet called the Gold Corp Challenge. It's basically $500,000 in prize money for anyone who can tell me, do I have any gold? And if so, where is it? He gets submissions from all around the world, 77 submissions. They use techniques that he's never heard of. And for his $500,000 in prize money, Rob McEwen finds $3.4 billion worth of gold. The market value of his company goes from $90 million to $10 billion. We were just vacationing with Rob and Cheryl last summer on their 18-seater jet in Europe. And he tells me the market value of Gold Corp is $38 billion. And I can tell you, because he's my neighbor, he's a happy camper. He thought differently about how you orchestrate capability. Our most precious asset goes out the elevator every night. You know what? Your most precious asset may never get in the elevator. We think that talent is inside our boundaries. It's not. And so this is a whole conversation that we can have too, if you want. Idea agoras, open markets for uniquely qualified minds. Prosumers, turning your consumers into producers. Tapping into peer production communities like IBM did with Linux. Opening up the APIs of your business to create open platforms like Amazon does. 40% of their revenue comes from that. So these ideas, the industrial age is over, have been around for a long time. It's finally happening. And there's the punctuation point, of course, is the crisis. We have a burning platform in all of these institutions today. You know the notion of a burning platform, or the costs of staying where you are become much greater than the cost of going to something fundamentally different. I mean, we've been talking about change in all these institutions, transforming the university, changing government. You know what? We have to do these things today. This is no longer an optional thing because the platform is on fire. So these are the 5 principles around which we need to rebuild these institutions. I'd be happy to talk about them. Collaboration, openness and sharing, transparency. Transparency is the communication of pertinent information. Sharing is about giving up assets, like IBM gave away $400 million of software to the Linux community in order to transform the competitive dynamics in the industry, and they did that. IBM would be a smaller company today if they'd not given away $400 of their intellectual property. Interdependence. Like I said to Wall Street, business can't succeed in a world that's failing. And finally, integrity. I mean, integrity is about being honest, considerate of the interests of others. It's about abiding by your commitments. And this is the foundation of trust. I'm very optimistic that companies and all institutions are going to have to rebuild themselves around these things in order to build trust, because that's the sine qua non of a networked world. So I'm going to end, but what I want to do is just rip you through a couple of these, and just do a few of these to give you a little taste, and then let's have a conversation. The financial system, well, it's broken. What do we do with the actually it's $2 trillion of toxic assets that are on the balance sheets of the US banks? It's actually 2 trillion plus or minus 2 trillion, because nobody knows what they're worth. How are we going to value these things? Any of you in finance, you can't mark them to market because there isn't a market. Nobody wants to buy them. You can't mark them to model because no one's going to believe the model of a bank. Why not place them in a commons? Create a a human genome of risk management and bring all the world's leading modelers together to value these assets. Well, there are companies that are working hard to do this right now. And we have to fix this problem because, you know, we're in a jobless recovery. I hate that term. It's like an oxymoron. You know, it's like scented deodorant or military music or jumbo shrimp. I mean, it's like a contradiction in terms, like safe sex. I mean, there is no such. So, jobless recovery, there is no recovery unless it's inclusive. And this should be the halcyon days of entrepreneurship because little companies can have all the capability of big companies without the main liabilities, bureaucracy, legacy culture, systems. And entrepreneurship is key to job creation. 80% of new jobs in Canada come from companies that are 5 years old or less. But if the banks are not lending money to little companies because of this problem, then we're going to be in a jobless recovery forever, meaning no recovery. So we need to fix this problem. We need to think creatively and start to apply these principles to the problem. Venture capital is also broken. Vencor is a company that's trying to reinvent venture capital by having a crowd that finds companies. The crowd narrows them down. The crowd does diligence. The crowd helps manage the company, and the crowd does a liquidity event. Kickstarter, unbelievable. You know, now President Obama has endorsed this microfinancing. If the banks are not going to do it, we'll find another way. And there's a flood of people who want to make small investments in interesting entrepreneurial companies. And the internet radically drops transaction costs, enable us to do that, to finance companies differently. Media and entertainment. Well, that was the old model of the newspaper, and it did go under. Now, there are lots of tough issues here. Happy to talk to them about. I mean, how do we pay journalists? How do we ensure that there is good quality investigative reporting? How do we create the conditions whereby we're not all in a bunch of little self-reinforcing echo chambers? You can just follow the point of view you like. You like Glenn Beck? It's all you listen to. And what happens is you end up, you know, the purpose of information is probably not so much to inform you, but rather to give you comfort. Now, on the other hand, there's some amazing new network models of the news. I'd be happy to talk about those. The music industry is another example. It's the canary in the mine shaft, basically. The internet was the best thing to ever happen to the music industry. But they took a legal solution to what was a technological and business model disruption. And the industry that brought you Elvis and the Beatles is now hated by its customers, suing children, and collapsing. In macroeconomics, an industry insider told us that the #3 source of revenue for the US labels is suing people. This is pathetic. And they're dying. You know, some guy takes the Beatles' White Album, Jay-Z's Black Album, remixes them to create the Gray Album. Sales of the White Album go up, sales of the Black Album go up. The record industry should be giving the guy a medal. Instead, they sue him. I mean, you don't need to own all your intellectual property. They should have turned music from being a product into a service. And this is where it's going, Spotify. Streaming internet audio. Everyone in this room, I bet, will pay $4 a month for access to any song ever recorded at any time, streamed to you onto your mobile device, into your car, your home stereo, your TV, whatever. Nobody is going to steal music. None of you will steal music if you can listen to any song at any time. Why would you take possession of the song if you can hear it whenever you want? Or you can hear a playlist. You create your own playlist. Or ask a question. Give me all the songs Keith Richards is listening to these days to get himself psyched before he goes on stage. But the internet, the music industry, rather than having a business model innovation like this, responded in a bad way, and they suffer as a result. This is a newspaper that gets published every day. It's called the Don Tapscott's Innovator Daily. It normally has about 300 articles. It takes me 0 minutes and costs me $0 to create this every day. I just have a group of 100 people. I call them Don Tapscott's Innovators on Twitter. And this thing called Paperly takes the feeds from all of these people, uses some algorithms that I've partially influenced to create a newspaper. And every day I look forward to reading what I have to say. And it's generally pretty darn good. Okay, moving on here. Universities and schools. Well, we're here, so we better do this one. Although, you know, the lecture is the process whereby the notes of a lecturer go to the notes of a student without going through the brains of either. And I appreciate the irony that I am standing up here giving you a lecture. But you're not going to remember much of this, actually. The 60 institutions, the 5 principles, 7 new business models, whatever. I'm just trying to convince you of a single idea. Lectures are useful for that, but they're not a good way of learning. You know, when I was a graduate student, University of Alberta, in 1975, I took a graduate course in statistics, and it was all in a computer lab. There were no lectures, but let's face it, the statistics lecture, by definition, is a bust, right? There's no one-size-fits-all for statistics. Everyone in the room is either bored or else they don't get it. So, but this was self-paced, and I remember I went through things I didn't understand. I went over and over again. I remember thinking, wow, if someone saw me going over this again, they'd think I was really dumb. But I went through it until I got it. Things I understood, I went through quickly. I ended up getting an A, but most kids did on the same set of standard tests had delivered a B- average. I mean, we just know that this is a better way of learning. It's self-paced and it's collaborative because the teacher was there to customize a learning experience. Teachers and professors don't become less important when you do this. They become more important. So, and because they do what only humans can do. They leave the technology to do what technology does better. So we need to transform universities, schools. Every kid in Portugal has a laptop connected to a high-speed network. And I was there, this classroom. These are 7-year-olds. The teacher stands up. She says, okay, kids, go to your astronomy blog now. And the kids pull up the solar system. And she says, today we're going to learn about something called the equinox. Does anyone know what an equinox is? The kids are all, nope, they're 7. She says, okay, you know the deal. Let's go find out. They can do it by themselves. They can partner up. They can work in a little group. The classroom explodes. The kids are running around. They're so excited. It's noisy. There's little groups, and they're all, no, try this and that. And then finally, this one group, we know, we got it. So they all stop. The kids, well, equinox is this and that, and the teacher's interacting. And, I mean, she's curating a highly customized, collaborative learning experience. The kids are loving the equinox. They're loving learning, and they're developing the kind of collaborative and learning capacities that would be required for the 21st century workforce. We also ought to change the way the content gets developed, shouldn't we, in the university? I mean, as I said this morning, how weird is it that there are thousands and thousands of, say, statistics professors all developing their own little way of explaining what an analysis of variance is. Their own little PowerPoints and notes and tests and software and explanations. They're probably a handful of best ways, and they'd be culturally specific. Why don't we get together and share knowledge? Could you be a leader in getting your institution to get on with the MIT Open Courseware Consortium? Gee, even Harvard has done it. That's a sign that, you know, leaders of the old paradigm can finally embrace something that's new. And the purpose is not to give kids in Bangalore access to an analysis of variance, although that's a byproduct. The purpose is that we have all these ivory towers of the industrial age. And why don't we start sharing in the creation of content? This will become more and more important as a lot of content becomes software. Okay, let's try and get through this. Science. This guy, Kevin Zawicki, an astrophysicist, and he, you know, there are all these satellites up there that are taking pictures of galaxies. Millions and millions of pictures. So he figured it would take 80 years for all the astronomers in the world to categorize these galaxies if they did it full time. So he did some research and he figured out that an amateur astronomist can categorize a galaxy. You know, is it elliptical? Which way is it rotating? That kind of stuff. With the same accuracy as a professional with 1 hour training. So there are now 275,000 astronomers in Galaxy Zoo, and they're going to have this done in a year. Pharmaceuticals are about to fall off the patent cliff. They need to change. They're going to lose a third of the revenue in the next year. They need to change the whole model of research. Government, we have these industrial age models. The government bureaucracy came up at the same time as the industrial age corporation. And bureaucracy was actually, the sociologists would know this here, historians, was actually a cool management term like 80 years ago. We needed bureaucracy. But now we have these bureaucracies that are stifling innovation and are really grinding to a halt. If we can create a business web to create product and service value in a marketplace, could we create a governance web to create public value? Well, this is happening all around the world, and I'd be happy to talk about that. DC App Store, we got applications for climate change where the BC government is reaching out to the world and helping them co-innovate value. They published all this open data, and then they said to the world, you create applications using this data that will help us reduce carbon in British Columbia. And they got dozens of responses. There was a small prize of under $50,000 given by a private company. They got all these amazing applications. The winner is this incredible thing. I saw that you can, from your little mobile device, look at the carbon being emitted by your company at any time, and you turn off the lights on an office floor and you watch the carbon go down. So this is an enormously kind of helpful thing. But it was created through a new division of labor in society. The old way is, you know, we have governments, and they collect taxes from citizens, and they have people inside their boundaries that create services, and they deliver those to passive recipients. We hope you enjoy the services. No, governments can become a platform now where by providing data, they enable the civil society, private companies, other government agencies, and individuals to self-organize, to create value. All right, enough already. The old you vote, I rule model of democracy. We can talk about this if you like to, but democracy, it's a weird thing in the world. Half of the world is clamoring for it, and the other half, especially young people that have it, they think it doesn't work. And there's a danger of legitimacy where young people who care a lot, we know they have strong values, they're not viewing the electoral process as a way of bringing about change. And that's, to me, that's a great problem. And it threatens our core institutions. We have to fix this problem. French Socialist Party opened up its entire leadership process. They were number 3. They opened up the whole process to the French population, engaged millions and millions of people, and that catapulted it into a leading position. So political parties are in danger of being disintermediated, too. I mean, they used to be institutions for policy and for discussion of ideas and for community and debate. Now they're institutions for raising money and fielding candidates. And, you know, it's the industrial model. I mean, I'm a politician. You vote for me, and I'm going to broadcast to you for 4 years, and then we get to do it again. Actually, I'm not just going to broadcast to you. Mainly what I'm going to do over these 4 years is raise money. In the US, I'm going to spend 75% of my time raising money. And oops, when it comes to voting on things, I guess maybe I'll have to take into consideration who's enabling me to have this job, and it's not the citizens. It's the lobbyists and the funders. So that's a big challenge. I think we could move to a second era of democracy where the first was great compared to what existed under feudalism. We had representative democracy, but there was a weak public mandate. We can now move to a second era based on a culture of public deliberation and active citizenship. This is not direct democracy. It's something very different. These are 12 techniques that I use in working with governments on how they can engage citizens in new ways. So I think we're done. We got another one. I'm going to just skip that. So these are 16 institutions. And I'm happy to talk about any of them for those that want to hang around. This is a new paradigm. And when you get one of these, you get a leadership crisis. Because new paradigms cause dislocation, conflict, uncertainty, confusion. They're nearly always based on some kind of dislocation, and vested interests fight against change. Leaders of old paradigms have great difficulty embracing the new. And that's what we're up against today. And I think a lot of this stuff, you know, liberal arts, useless degrees, and so on, to me, this is old paradigms sort of in their death agony, looking for desperate acts. You see, if we, rather than educate students, we just teach them skills. And in doing so, I think we do a great disservice to young people. So this is a huge challenge, and it's a challenge for your community on how do we find the leadership to transform not just the university and government, but to participate in this broader transformation that's underway. I think we're at a turning point, and we have door number 1 and door number 2. It's complicated, but when all is said and done, these are the choices that we have. And I think if we stick with the current paradigm, the future will be a bleak one. And we will see a lot worse than Paul Krugman describes. We'll see a global social explosion that'll make the 1960s look like kid stuff. So to close, I want to just tell you a story, or actually show you something. Anthony and I, towards the end of the book, we started wondering, what does an age of networked intelligence look like? And we'd studied all these companies and organizations, and we thought, well, let's take a look at nature. And we had bees come in swarms, and fish come in schools, and sheep come in flocks, and cows come in herds. Starlings over the moors of England come in something called a murmuration. It refers to the murmuring of the wings of the birds. And throughout the night, the starlings are out over a 20-mile radius doing what starlings do, foraging for food and so on. And at night, they come together and create one of the most spectacular things in nature. And it has a function. It protects the birds from predators. You see on the right there is a hawk, a predator being chased away by the collective power of the little birds. Now, it warms the birds up for the cold night ahead. There's an exchange of information. And scientists that have studied this say they've never seen an accident. There's leadership, but there's no one leader. Now, is this some kind of fanciful analogy, or could we actually learn something from this? Well, contemplate this idea. Imagine if we could connect ourselves on this planet with these vast networks of glass and air, connecting our cranium, our intelligence. Could we go beyond just sharing information and sharing knowledge to start to share our intelligence? Could we create some kind of consciousness that expands beyond an individual or a classroom or a school or a company or a community? If we could do that, that'd be pretty extraordinary. Maybe we could solve a bunch of big problems. You know, social sciences, the learning organization. We've always had trouble creating that. Maybe organizations like people that are not conscious can't learn. I mean, I try and keep my audiences conscious when I'm speaking because I find they learn more when they are conscious. What else could we solve? Well, I look at those kids today in Syria that are being shot down in the streets as we speak, and I see something like this that's happening. It's pretty unstoppable. During the Egyptian revolution, people said, Mubarak is too strong. The kids are going to give up. They're going to go home. And I knew that they wouldn't, because if they gave up and went home, he would hunt them down and he would kill them. And they knew that. Just like somehow this thing collectively understands that if they break up, the predator will have a field day. This thing is functioning according to these principles I've been describing: collaboration, there's an openness, there's an interdependence, that the individual bird seems to understand that their interests are tied with the interests of the murmuration as a whole. And there's this great integrity that gives this thing an awesome courage to take on a fierce predator. Well, I look at this and I get a lot of hope that this smaller world our kids inherit might actually be a better one, and that this age of networked intelligence could be an age of promise fulfilled and of peril unrequited. One thing for sure is the next period will not be boring. So, thank you.
For a few questions.
All right. Well, Don has graciously agreed to take a few questions. So there are 2 microphones situated near the front. We are recording this, so please come to the microphones to ask your questions. And although I'm conscious of the reality that I'm standing on one of the 16 burning platforms, I feel like I'm in good company. I wanted to ask you, though, one question just to perhaps start it. And you've had that slide which you kept coming back to of the 16 institutions.
Sorry, I'm just trying
to. And each of which needs to be rebooted, and the challenge facing each of them is huge. But what happens when we think about the relationship between those 16? Because they don't exist necessarily as 16 atomized squares. How complicated? How does that complicate or perhaps create an opportunity for other solutions to come forward?
Well, it sure does complicate things, and everything is connected to everything else. But the good news is, because of networking and the idea of collective intelligence, I think that there's the capability that transcends institutions to make these kinds of systemic changes. So, and I just see it. I mean, this is not a big theory. You go out and you look at any one of those, and you'll see amazing things that are happening. I didn't talk about healthcare, but I mean, there's a thing called Patients Like Me. 20% of all kids that have and people who have Lou Gehrig's disease are in this collaborative community, and they share all this information. It's really helping them manage their health. This is a vignette that points to what we should do with healthcare. We have an industrial age model. I'm a clinician. I have knowledge. You're a patient. You don't. You come into the healthcare system. That's how you get healthcare. And I deliver it to you, and you're a passive recipient. I hope I'm helpful. Well, that was a better model than what existed before, but now Patients Like Me shows us a new collaborative model whereby every Canadian, every baby that's born should get a website. You're born, you get a birth certificate and a website. And this is your electronic healthcare record, and it's also your social network for health. And you have a problem, you get to collaborate with others. Patients Like Me shows that it works. So, again, you know, the complexities between institutions. This is actually happening in every one of these institutions. And, you know, you don't know exactly where it's going to go, but you can see the contours. The contours are becoming very clear.
Okay, there's an awful void here in front of these microphones. Somebody's got a question. Here we go. Maybe they're tweeting the questions to you.
Thank you very much for that talk. It was very inspiring. And you know, I'm hearing language that you speak of in a variety of other domains. So it's nice to see that this is it is becoming a movement. But I'm a PhD student right now here in Waterloo at Laurier, and I'm researching resistance to change. And I understand that this generation that was born into technology is really leading the wave. But what about the other, group of people that, inherently, I think they're scared that their values will change along with everything else. And at some point, I think, these kinds of ideas need to become social norms in order to really be widely accepted. Yeah. Any comments on that?
Well, it's a very thoughtful question. First of all, in the culture of the new generation, if you look at it, and I think you'll find the new culture of learning, you'll find the new culture of work, you'll find the new citizen, you'll find the new marketplace. And this is the first time in history when we can really learn from young people. There are the three post-war generations, the baby boom, then the baby bust, sometimes called Gen X, and then the echo of the boom. And now we've got these new kids that are 12 and under, and Lord only knows what they're going to be like. But coming into our institutions, these kids are now starting to face a lot of resistance, and it worries me. You know, they're bright-eyed, they're bushy-tailed, they're happy to have a job or to be a grad student or whatever, and they've got this great culture of innovation and collaboration. At their fingertips, they have better tools than exist in most of our very sophisticated companies. And what do? We stick them in a cubicle, treat them like Dilbert, try and supervise them, and then we take away their tools. Banning Facebook, for example. I mean, you know, the Premier of Ontario banned Facebook, and I was talking to one of his executives for all public employees. And I talked to one of his execs, and I said, why did he do that? And he said, well, the Premier felt that young people were wasting their time on the job. To which I replied, well, if that's true, is that a technology problem? You fix that by taking away technology, or has it got something to do with motivation and workflow and job design, you know, performance evaluation? And he agreed. And I said, what was the effect of banning Facebook? And that was a few years ago. He said, well, everybody went to MySpace. They're probably all on Twitter now. But, you know, we fear what we don't understand. The weirdest thing that I've found is that the boomers are actually more open to this new generation than the Gen X. Because I think that the boomers see their own children. And they know, well, my kids, I mean, they're really different. They sure do their homework different, but they're actually okay. Now, just one more point on this. The issue of values is quite fundamental, and this is the way to get everybody involved. I went through it quickly, but those 5 values, collaboration, openness, sharing intellectual property, interdependence, and integrity, ought to be the values of any generation. And those are the values around which we need to rebuild our institutions. And I could make the case to you that our institutions today are not based on those values. They're based on something else. So this is something that we should all, you know, feel comfortable about and embrace.
Sure.
My question is regarding the role of experts in this new age. So the previous model has people that specialize who have access to basically restricted information, and through dealing with that information and through being the central figure that sends out their mass-produced message, they become experts in their field. So my question is, in this new era where information is shared, everyone can be at the same level, is there the same role for experts? Can we develop experts to the same way? And are we basically sacrificing the vanguard of progress by making everyone an expert and kind of normalizing the field?
Yeah, I think as we network human beings together, there's actually what's happening is an explosion of expertise and knowledge. There sure is an explosion of information. Between the beginning of humankind in the year 2003, we created 5 exabytes of information. That's a lot. An exabyte is a quintillion bytes. In the last 12 hours, we created 5 exabytes of information. Now, a lot of that is YouTube videos of cats and stuff like that. But a lot of it is new knowledge. And it's like financial transactions. And it's really important collaboration that's being stored. And I mean, just study something like Wikipedia. How can it be that this thing developed by a bunch of amateurs, according to the big study that's been done, has the same error rate as the one developed by the learned professors, the Nobel Prize winners, and the Pulitzer Prize winners? Well, it turns out that the amateurs, there's actually lots of real experts among the amateurs. But also, it's an incredible meritocracy. And, you know, to me, personal use is a precondition for any kind of comprehension. If you're not on Twitter, go try it out. Try out Foursquare. You know, if you're not on Facebook, get your teenagers to get you going on it. And go on to Wikipedia and write an article. Or go into Wikipedia and do something. I mean, go on there and, who can we pick on? The president of the University of Waterloo is probably on Wikipedia. There's his bio. Go there and say he's the world's leading authority on accordions. And see what happens. There are like 3,000 expert hardcore Wikipedians that are going to be all over that. World's leading authority on everything. Flags are going to fly. Then there's going to be a whole bunch of accordion players saying, who the heck is he? Doesn't he have a CD? And it's an incredible meritocracy that results in enormous knowledge and expertise being generated. And I mean, I could talk about this for a while. I'll just give you one other example. You know, knowledge sharing. As you alluded to, in the old industrial age corporation, people didn't share knowledge because knowledge was the basis of power, right? And the world was divided into the governed and the governors. At the top, the supreme governor, the bottom, the permanently governed, and in between, those will alternate. And your goal is to move up the org chart. The Hay system says that means you get more money, and you don't want to share knowledge because it's the foundation of power. And you know, this, like the best-selling management book of all time describing what's wrong with this. It sure wasn't written by me. It wasn't even written by Peter Drucker. It was written by a guy named Scott Adams. It's called Dilbert. And this is the old bureaucratic industrial age organization. So we came up with all these reasons why you can't share knowledge that were given to us by adults. And then we put them out to the kids, the teenagers, and we said, how would you overcome these impediments to sharing knowledge? And the kids couldn't answer the question because they didn't understand why these were impediments. I mean, one adult says, well, you can't share knowledge with someone you've never met because you can't trust them. And one 14-year-old says, well, if you can fall in love with somebody you never met, surely you could share knowledge. Now, there's a side to that that's kind of questionable. But another kid says, what good is knowledge if you don't share it? I don't get it. Another says, well, isn't that what the web's all about, is sharing knowledge? They didn't understand that that was a problem. Did you want to comment more? Yeah.
Yes. My main point was, if knowledge is so open, its value becomes less. And before there was people who could make their lives around gathering this knowledge and sharing this knowledge, and by doing so, their day-to-day was working with this knowledge and becoming experts. I'm wondering, will that role still be feasible in the kind of new future where information doesn't have as much value, so that maybe the job of being an expert becomes obsolete, so that you can't work with that data every day, so you can't pursue whatever it is you're an expert in because that's not valuable anymore and you have another job to do.
Okay. Well, I would question your statement that the value of knowledge declines as it becomes more open. Now, the question is the value to whom? Wikipedia is the most valuable single knowledge artifact probably that we have, and it's completely open. It's owned by nobody, and anybody can go in and change it. Now, are we talking about commercial value here? If we're talking about that, then you're into the whole issue of business strategy, and that's a really interesting topic. How about Linux? Totally open, owned by nobody, created by thousands of digital Rotarians. So it turns out that Linux, totally open, owned by nobody, is the single most important piece of technology to create value for IBM. How can that be? Well, some companies said Linux is communist. Knowledge should be proprietary. It should be owned by private companies. IBM originally had that point of view, and then they thought about it and they said, no, you know what? We're going to embrace Linux. As part of our business model, we're going to tap into this open peer production community. Why would they, and give away $400 million of software, taking that stuff that they owned and giving it away. Why would they do that? To make it more valuable, to make their company more valuable. They created a platform upon which they built a multi-billion-dollar hardware and services business. They saved themselves $1 billion a year developing their own proprietary operating system, and they got to stick it to Microsoft. Probably not in that order of importance. They kept Microsoft out of the high-end enterprise computing market. And so you can't make the mistake of thinking, no, information is only valuable if I own it. That's what the record companies did. They said, you're infringing upon our intellectual property, so we're going to have a legal response and sue you. Well, they didn't have to do that. You know, the internet was the best thing to happen to them. They had these huge costs because the entire industry was based on atoms. They had CDs made of atoms, and they put them into cases made of atoms and onto trucks made of atoms that used fuel made of atoms and put onto shelves made of atoms. And for that reason, the industry wasn't profitable. You could only bet on home run hitters. You could never bet on a single hitter or a bunter because only one of 20 would ever make money because of these bloated costs that they had. Along comes the internet, turns all that to zero. All they had to do was change music from being a product to a service, as I described, and forget about owning the IP in the traditional sense, to open it up, to make it available to everybody, but through a business model. So it's a really great question. In Wikinomics, where that's what this book is about, is your topic, there are dozens and dozens of cases in there where everybody's opening up, they're collaborating and sharing, and just about everybody's making money. A lot more money than they did in the old model. And even in things like Wikipedia, there are all kinds of commercial things that are going on there. I mean, people go into Wikipedia, they go there to, well, because it's a hobby and they like to network, but they go there for personal accomplishment. They go there for reputational reasons. If I get a resume of someone who's written 40 Wikipedia articles, that says more to me than they went to Harvard Business School. It says they're an innovator, they're ahead of the curve, they know how to write, they know how to collaborate, they know how to defend their interests, they're into knowledge sharing, they understand the internet, new media, and so on. So even in these completely free environments, there are subtle sort of commercial and value exchanges that are underway. That was a very long answer to a short question. You psychologists would know that's called punishment.
Do you have time to take?
Yeah,
there are three more questioners,
okay.
So here's what I propose. Why don't each of you ask your questions and then take them as a group. Okay, the new collaborative model of question forming.
So you talked about the Gold Corp Challenge, and that was 10 years ago, and the majority of gold companies haven't followed suit. And there are other examples you talked about, and they're few and far between. So I'm wondering, are the institutional sort of inertias exist for existing institutions so high that they don't see the sea change you're talking about coming at them?
Well, actually, Goldcorp's now the second largest. Oh, sorry.
Well, if you want to do it that way.
It's okay.
I'm flexible.
What role, if any, will things like patents or copyright play in the future?
I love the talk. I think what I hear is that the change that you're hoping will take place is already taking place from below. My question is this. In the healthcare system, both physical and mental, there are incredible bottlenecks that are atrocious. I just went through one recently, and you're sitting there thinking, this is absurd. But back to the elitist question, the healthcare, the psychiatrists and the physicians and the whoosies have really important knowledge, and you can't quite get it from the web, and you can't quite treat yourself. And so what's your vision there?
Okay, well, let's go backwards. Not in a philosophical sense. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying there's not a role for clinicians. I'm just trying to turn professionals into doing the things that only humans can do and use a collaborative model to make the whole system better. You know, the clinicians should be still examining you and still performing surgery, and they should also be the main ones informing your clinical record with data. But that should be, and of course there's privacy, but you have transparency into your own record in my world, which we don't today. I mean, I happen to have a really good GP who will actually tell me what's in my record. I've never actually looked at it. So there's still a role for physicians, but also there's vast knowledge that's contained out there, and there's new generative knowledge that comes about through collaboration. So in patients like me, they generate a ton of new insights that's being used by doctors and medical researchers to understand, well, originally it was ALS, and now there are dozens of diseases where people come together and whereby they collaborate. So it's a combination of professionals with deep expertise simply changing their modus operandi to be one that embraces these principles of collaboration and that embraces the internet. And that would work in any institution. It works in healthcare, but it would also work in the education, in the university, in the schools, and for government and any of the institutions that I talked about. Goldcorp, well, that was the penultimate.
Patents and copyright.
Patents and copyright. The purpose of patent copyright legislation is to encourage innovation. And it came out of the industrial age. I mean, we have industrial age models. And it's one area of the law that I'm working with a group at the World Economic Forum that's rethinking our problems or how we solve global problem solving. And on this group, I'm chairing this group actually, I've got some judges and law professors who are convinced that the whole legal system is broken. For sure, the international legal system is broken. It was based on a world where, well, it came out of the Second World War. Bretton Woods and created all these laws and the GATT, Global Agreement on Trades and Tariffs, and the global financial regulation, the World Bank, the UN, and now we have the G20 and so on, and they exist for a previous period. Patents, is it advance the cause of innovation to have 3 patent trolls, 3 people who work for a company, 2 of them are lawyers and one's a CEO, go after RIM and take $1 billion from RIM? Does that help with innovation? What's happening now is that patents have become an impediment to innovation in all kinds of different areas because, well, the music industry example, rather than rethinking their business model, which would have been in the interests of musicians, songwriters, music lovers, because you have access to all this music, and the industry itself, they fell back on the law and on the patent and copyright legislation to protect them. They took a legal solution. And this is the solace of people who don't want to innovate and don't want to transform their business. So all across the economy now, I'm seeing that patents are not protecting innovation, which was the original idea. They're increasingly an inhibitor. Now, of course, we shouldn't get rid of all patents and copyrights, but we need to think very differently about this stuff, and it's a big topic. Goldcorp, well, it's a good one to end on because isn't it true that even when you have a spectacular example like that, leaders of old paradigms have great difficulty embracing the new? Now, Barrick adopted a similar challenge to find silver, only the prize was a lot bigger. And the people I talked to at Barrick said they were glad they did it. They learned a lot. They got some great new insights. But it's not something that's really endemic to the whole industry. Rob McEwen has a new gold mining company, and he hasn't done it yet for that company. And I think that in that specific case, the conditions were very good to conduct a challenge like that. And you have to be really careful. You don't want to go into this new world in a nonchalant or flippant manner. I mean, because there can be all kinds of unintended consequences. If Rob McEwen had no gold, the challenge would have changed the value of his company differently, right? Would have gone from 90 million to 0. So, he knew that he had some gold. He just didn't know where he could find it. But I'll just end on this thought. Overall, I look around and I see these institutions that are fighting change, and the leaders of old institutions fighting change, contrasted with this unstoppable force of people self-organizing, participating, getting engaged, especially young people, but other people as well. And the train has left the station. The cat is out of the bag. The horse is out of the barn. Help me out here. The tube is out of the toothpaste. I mean, this is not turning back. And sure, this is a time of great peril, and it's a time of great danger in the world, but to me, fundamentally, it's a time of great opportunity. And I've never been more optimistic about the potential of humanity to bring about some very profound changes. Changes that collectively mean getting us into a whole new age, really. And hopefully we'll do it.
Well, Don,